If you have any kind of online presence and you're looking at potentially packaging your knowledge into an online program for your audience, you're going to want to watch this interview where I speak with Barbara Serra, who's a TV news presenter and a journalist who's been in this industry for the last 20 plus years. She has packaged together her knowledge into an online program to help people who English is their second language. Barbara says that she was actually being inundated with questions about people wanting to get the jobs that she was getting in broadcasting as English was their second language. And that was the reason she packaged her knowledge into an online program, so she had one point of contact that these people could go and get the most relevant information. So if this sounds relatable to you and the position that you're in, make sure you watch this full interview as we go through her background, how she's launched not once but this program twice, some of the challenges and some of the advice that she'd be giving anyone in the same position. Welcome, Barbara Serra. How are you doing? Thanks very much for joining me today.
Hello there. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Where are you calling in from? In your home office?
If the home office is the kitchen, then yes, I'm in my kitchen in London. I am not on shift today, so I am watching the news as opposed to, reading it or playing a part in making, the news programs. So yeah, just my kitchen, which you can just see the bookshelves, but there's a whole kitchen thing on the other side.
Perfect. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. The purpose of these calls is to really go out to people and speak to people who are looking at starting an online business. I know that's something you've recently done, so I'm really keen to talk to you, to see your sort of fresh experience, or have started an online business and it's just sort of a bit overwhelming for them. They don't know where to start. So I guess, first of all, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background, what you do in your day job, and then we can sort of discuss about why and how we sort of got into the online program bit.
Absolutely. So I'm a journalist. I'm a TV journalist. I'm based in London. Right now, I work for Sky News. I present the news there. I've worked for the BBC, for Jazeera English. I'm originally from Italy, so I do a lot on Italian television as well. So that's kind of like my day job, which in itself is a lot of different things. I suppose my unique selling point, as they say, is the fact that I am second language English. So I am a native Italian speaker, although I've been speaking English for a long time, and I've been in London for 30 years, but in fairness, came here as an adult. So I didn't come here as a child where, language-wise, it does make a difference. And it's something that always had an impact on my life and my career, especially as a journalist and broadcaster as well. I do a lot of work around it. So how the fact that English as a global language has an impact on the international narrative that we could say around all sorts of stories. But on a practical level, especially because I am on TV, but have been for 20 plus years, I would get approached by a lot of younger journalists who were like me, because remember, there's 1 billion people around the world that speak English as a second language. And it would be interesting, for example, to know how many people listening to this now are second language English. When
absolutely.
You speak English, you literally, people could be tuning into this from anywhere in the world, and they have English, which is like the key to accessing the international community. And so I thought I would put together I just found myself having the same phone conversation over and over and over again. And even though everyone will have a different linguistic story and challenges, so basically most of them were having problems getting into journalism, or it was kind of, sometimes it was a language issue, sometimes it was accent, sometimes it was cultural. So there were certain points in all the conversations that I was having that kept on coming up over and over again. And so I guess that's how the idea started, that, it'd be good because sometimes if you're busy, you can't have that call, right?
Yeah.
And so I just thought, well, it'd be great to basically have an online course. And I had no idea how it would start, which is funny because, I work in television. I say television, the news has been so much more than television for years now. It's all about social media or YouTube or just, you're streaming on your own platform, whatever channel you are. But I just had no idea how to structure it editorially, although that I was more comfortable with because I think that I just needed a chat with someone, and ultimately it would be my thinking behind it. But I just had no idea, what platform to use. Did I need a website? How the heck do I do that? How much is all of that going to cost? Because I appreciate that there's going to be some costs up front, but nor do you want to sink, however many thousands of pounds into something that you're not quite sure about. How much time was it going to take? Because I can dedicate some time to it, but news is a very unpredictable business. So out of the blue, oh, who knows, say an American president can say he's not going to be nominated anymore. And all of a sudden, or an election gets called in the UK, and all of a sudden, your foreseeable future gets very, very busy. So there were just lots of unknowns. And also because, the great thing of I already have an online profile and a media profile. So the great thing is that it was quite, or at least not easy, but easier to develop an audience. But at the same time, there was a reputational risk to it. So I didn't want to go on air, so to speak, with something that was, pardon the French, crap, right? Because it just wouldn't reflect well on me, and I didn't know how to price it. There were just all sorts of things. Sure. But that idea had been niggling for years. And look, there's a monetary angle to it as well. I haven't made my millions yet with my course, and I think there's different things that I aim at different parts of my audience. So I'm never going to make money when I help younger journalists. When I deal with companies, that's something else. But yeah, it was just very much just needing to get my thoughts straight. But the idea had been there, 3 years at least.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Before it actually became a thing.
So this is you serving as a broadcast journalist, and you're speaking English as a second language, and people are coming up to you and asking you these actual pointed questions.
So that's that. So it's interesting because I spent ages figuring out the title of my course, because I almost start by saying what it isn't. So it's not an English language course, also because there's no unique selling point in that. The internet is chock full of English language courses. So it's not that. What I do, it's basically media training for second language English speakers.
Yeah.
Whether you are the CEO of a company that needs to do an interview and obviously speaking English when it's your second language, or whether you are a budding presenter or a reporter, or not budding, but someone who is very established in their home country, but would like to do international news. And international news, they call it international, but it's not. It's English and American, and it's all in English.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing. So it's not a language course, but I look at things like, the main thing is, I start by saying, look, it's holding you back. Being bilingual is great. Don't get me wrong. It opens your life, your world, even the way you think. There's a million stats about how being bilingual actually changes your brain, because you literally know there's more than one way of looking and explaining something. But I suppose what I focus on is that it's also a drawback. And if you're using language for work, which, let's face it, most people in one way or another do, then it pays to be aware of the pitfalls. And I divide them in language, accent, culture. So language is, not to be brutal, but how good is your English? Is your grammar okay? How's your vocabulary? And expanded. Accent, and I have a big thing that within reason you shouldn't try to change it, because otherwise you end up sounding fake. There's some classic recordings out there, I think, of me poshing up, Tim, trying to sound like, home counties Babs. It did not work very well. But there are things that you can do to be clearer, right? No point trying to be something that you're not, but clarity is kind of non-negotiable. And then I look at culture, which is, when you're speaking a language, you're also speaking the culture that language comes from. And so how to work around it. So that's kind of my course. And then other practical, things that I have learned. There's a specific thing for journalists, a specific video about preparing for, a big speech and how you would do it. That's more like bog standard media training, but with a language twist. So that's what it is. But it took me a long time to figure out, okay, how many videos, how many options, what's the silver, gold, platinum.
Sure. So I was just going to ask. So I have helped you along this sort of process, but what was, you were doing this, this is your evenings and weekends project, right? Because you're full-time working
As a
in
journalist.
television. And I think that the biggest thing for me is you already had an audience, and they were sort of effectively like tapping you on the shoulder, saying, "Hey, how do I do what you do?" Effectively. So, talk us through the sort of where you were at in terms of the process of where to start packaging your knowledge into this program. What was the sort of first? What were the challenges that you experienced when actually approaching
Yeah.
putting your program together?
I suppose it was, I knew that I had things to say because I'd
Mhm.
had the same conversation. I mean, when I say hundreds of times, I'm not kidding, over 20 years, right? So I knew that I had the information. It was more how to package it and how to effectively turn it into videos and how to separate it. So
Mhm.
even what I just mentioned now, that there was, language, accent, culture, it actually took me a long time, to figure out that those were the kind of subheadings of the, the chapter headings, if you
Sure.
will, of this course, because I only started really thinking in terms of culture when I really boiled everything down. And I suppose I started by just writing things down. So I thought, okay, what are the sentences that I always say again and again and again when I'm talking to people, right? And then I wrote them down, and then I tried to pair off, or, put the ones that had stuff in common together. So it was really sorting out my thoughts and always thinking, you know, how much of it is me just kind of going off on one about second language, and how much of it is useful? Like, ultimately,
Yeah.
what can I teach? Because when people say, I mean, it's interesting what you said, people say, I want to be like you. Well, they don't want to be like me. They want to have my job, or, some
Sure.
of the jobs that I have.
Yeah.
And, I'm not, there are some courses out there that do this, but I don't promise I'm not going to get you a job in television. And this is not what it's about. But if you're given the opportunity, I'm going to tell you what to look out for and how to make sure that you make the most of it, and also how to put yourself in a situation where you get given the opportunity, because I'm also going to tell you what the bosses are thinking. So actually,
Yeah.
there is a module all about feedback.
Yeah.
And my number one advice is, don't believe people when they tell you, oh, you sound fine.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to people like you, Tim, but never believe first language, or native speakers when they say you sound fine, because it's such a minefield. What are they
Yeah.
going to tell you? You sound foreign. It's kind of, it could be seen as offensive. So basically, it was, I kind of like regurgitated everything I knew on a piece of paper. And then I tried to see, okay, what is emerging in modules? And at first I felt overwhelmed, because I thought, surely I always thought, like, I need a minimum of something. I need a minimum of 10 videos, and they need to be a minimum of like 15 minutes. Otherwise there is no, and actually you were very good at that when you said, actually, all you need is the information and the knowledge. And so I think now I've got it's 8 videos, and they're not 15 minutes. And actually some of the best ones are around 7 minutes. And it's like, get to the point. This is what you need to know. I've told you. And then I give people some exercises.
Yeah.
So it was that mainly. I mean, look, then
Yeah.
there's the whole technical side that I'm sure we'll talk about. But the bit that only I could do, the bit that, within reason, if you know what I mean, you couldn't really help me with, because it's my knowledge that had to come out, was the editorial, in a
Yeah.
way.
And I think that was the way it worked out is because you had already grown an audience online. You had these people tapping you on the shoulder. You had a lot of questions, and you're saying you have answered these questions hundreds of times. I think that typically is the best way to start any kind of online program. I do see time and time again people thinking that they know what people want, but they haven't engaged with as many people as you have, at least. And then they sort of put something online together and then sort of put it out there to the world, and then no one wants to buy it, or it's not actually what they wanted. So I think by engaging as much as you can with the people who, like in real life, or who've reached out to you via email or socials, by engaging with them as much as possible, you get a really much better feel for what they're after. And I think that really helped us go through the process and reverse engineer what
Yeah.
to put in the program to then deliver to them. Does that make sense?
I love that reverse engineer. You see, you had like the phrase to to sort of say what I spent 10 minutes trying to say. Look, I mean, you say I had an audience, but remember, I have a TV audience for people that tune in and watch the news or maybe, read stuff I write about like neo-fascism. What I also tried to do, and I think I did that for about 18 months before launching the course, is using my social media platforms, putting feelers out. Yeah. So, for example, I found that LinkedIn was the best platform for it because people are there for sort of work stuff. And other ones as well, but there where I would, write a post and see, okay, how are people reacting and what are people saying? Always engaging in the comments, again, to just stimulate the conversation, and then always reaching out to and maybe friends of friends who I'm sure had never seen me on TV, but engaged in that post. So in a way, yes, I'll admit I'm lucky because I have a profile for my work in journalism, which just makes it easier. But I had tried to finesse that profile, possibly almost 2 years before we launched the program, specifically on that. And I was giving talks. So, and I also thought to myself, okay, it needs a name. And so I haven't called the course this, but a lot of the stuff I've done, it's like the privilege of speaking English. Or I have a newsletter and I've called it News with a Foreign Accent. Yep. Right. And for example, I did a post on that newsletter, which to this day is one of my the most random people will come up to me or will even mention it without knowing I've written it. This one post where I say, the challenges faced by second language English journalists. And that kind of went viral. So, I specifically tried to develop that aspect of my audience using my TV work as a launchpad. But in reality, not just that. I'm sure now there's a lot of people. And I mean, the great thing now from the program is that I have a specific mailing list of just over 1,000 people specifically for the course. Now, unfortunately, 1,000 people have not purchased the course, although I remain optimistic. But what I have is this specific. So it's kind of like if you think of my social media audience, anyone who maybe sees me on TV and for whatever reason just follows. Then from that, I distilled and created a Substack newsletter called News with a Foreign Accent, where I also talk about the second language English thing, but also talk about news. So, how the English language will affect the way we look at the far right? Because the Anglophone countries don't have a history of it, like the UK and the US. So that's quite a highbrow, journalisy kind of thing. So if you think I've got maybe altogether 100,000 social media followers, but then it goes down to, 5,000 newsletter subscribers because it's so specific, and then down to 1,000 people who are subscribed or, one way or another have gone to the course. But those 1,000 are so precious because I know exactly why they're following me. And actually the newsletter as well. Those 5,000 in the newsletter are so loyal and they're so engaged, so much more than someone on Twitter who'll just click whatever. And they don't, they'll engage once every blue moon.
Yeah.
So I've been harvesting, my specific social media followers.
And you've done that very well. I mean, I couldn't have put it better myself. It's people get overwhelmed with funnels and how much they should post online and how much they should try and get the email. But you, like you say, you distilled it from your followers, from your newsletter down to your emails. And for me, that's really key. A lot of people don't have as much interaction that you were investing. And don't see as good results that we did. So
yeah. I started being a bit of a stalker as well. So I would just go on Instagram and put second language English, right? And a lot of them will be Duolingo kind of things where it's and again, I never lie to anybody. I said, look, I'm not an English teacher. Trust me, I'm not going to teach you about verbs. But I would then get engaged in the conversation. So if there was anything that someone said and I thought, oh, well, actually, what was a recent one? Oh, I'll tell you another one that I didn't do, but I should have done. It was on LinkedIn. And it was someone saying that it is wrong if you're going to learn English, it is wrong to just consider native English speakers as teachers. And actually, I was going to wade in and disagree with her as a fellow second language speaker, because I think, well, actually, I disagree because, we're never going to sound, I think if you're not British, you're never really going to sound British. It's very rare, or American or Canadian or whatever. But it's good to have that as a kind of reference point and then make your peace with yourself and sound like you. And, I'm a native Italian speaker. My son is half English and we live in London and whatever. But, we have an Italian teacher that sometimes comes and talks to him. And I was intransigent that she had to be a native Italian speaker. So you see what I mean? It's something like that, and it's a bad example because I didn't actually get around to wading into this conversation, but that's what I would have done, because then you start that conversation. And as long as then on my LinkedIn profile, which I've changed, or any profile, it says specifically, I help second language English broadcasters. So anyone would have checked my profile, would have seen that I'm trying or starting to speak about it, followed me, and then I would have built it that way. So again, I appreciate that I had it easier because I had a captive audience in my social media followers anyway. But a lot of my best followers now are the ones that I've cultivated this other way. They're not the random people that follow me on Twitter because they've seen me on the telly.
Yeah. No, that's key. So let's talk about some of the phases before we actually pull the trigger and launch this program. So the
denial, fear, terror, all of those.
So we did spend quite a bit of time getting people in your audience to raise their hand by offering them a free piece of media for their email again. So it's another opt-in to say, hey, are you interested in this thing that we're about to promote? And then it was a case of promoting to that really highly engaged email list. And so this year we've launched twice. And a lot of people do get a little bit of fear in launching their programs for a lot of different reasons. One of the big ones is like the tech overwhelm. So whereas we tried to sort of walk through that in a logical process, we did have a little bit of a technical challenge on the first launch, right? So it wasn't sort of without like fail. It wasn't like flawless, but I still class that as a successful launch because it was a great conversion, and you welcomed a bunch of new students into your first program. So
and they were all happy, which was crucial because I didn't know how they were going to react.
Exactly. So just sort of tell us a little bit about how you experienced your first launch, and then we can go on to like the second launch. What was that first launch
so the way we decided to do it, it's funny because I'd never before, talking about how to launch a program, I never would have thought that this is the way that we would have done it. But we decided to have like a live webinar. And I know it's crazy, but even though I'm always on TV, I got quite stressy about the live webinar because it's like, oh my God, it's just me and whatever. Anyway.
It's something new, right? It's just new. Yeah.
And so, but in fairness, if we go back a step, one of the things that we had put on the new website or, landing page, and that's the other thing, landing page, website, like to me, it's like, what's
new terminology,
website, was this paper that I had prepared, the 8 tips, the 8 pieces of advice that I would give to second language, public speakers, and that did really well because that I could kind of like plug everyone, and anyone who downloads it, it's totally free. And I have to say, there's quite if anything, this may sound weird, I was almost over generous because I did put quite a lot in there and it's completely free. So it's kind of, you balance it out because then you think, okay, there's more on the course, but if this is, if you can't afford it, then you get this. So there was the sort of the PDF with the 8 tips. And then we did this webinar and it was we got a lot of subscriptions for that. And all of a sudden you think, crikey, and I did get there's something like with the link that sort of wasn't quite registering, but then lots of people did manage anyway to find where the webinar was. And that I think went really well. And again, it was that balance between, you're whetting people's appetite, aren't you? You are giving some tips. I mean, I genuinely did. I'm not just withholding everything and then saying, oh, no, you can only find out if you buy the course. But you are whetting people's appetite. And so it was very much balancing that with still then, not giving the game away and still having the course. And that went really well. And, and it was always so So we decided to just keep it open for 5 days, and then it stopped because there was also a live element to it. So just for anyone who hasn't been to barbaraserra.info, where my course is, there's the online bit, the sort of like foundation where you just download the 8 videos whenever you want, you watch them whenever, or you can get me for a one-on-one after you've done the videos. And so obviously we closed the course so that I could assess all the one-on-ones and get through all of them, and so I wouldn't be overwhelmed. And I have to say, at the beginning, there was one thing that didn't work. So we had 3 levels: one-on-one, one with a group, and or just the online. It was interesting how no one wanted to do it. Like literally no one, or maybe one person, applied for the group one. And it just made me think that maybe accents are such a personal thing that people don't actually want the group interaction. They want to. So that was I would never have thought of that in a million years before. So yeah, but the webinar I'll be honest, I found it stressful, but very, very productive. And then it stayed online. And then again, loads of people who'd missed it because we had those technical glitches. But actually, I think most of them then still caught up. And again, everyone who subscribed for it is an email address. So I know now where I have, just to be clear, my course is on Kajabi. So on Kajabi, I know I've got those 1,000 emails, and they are, recent, connected specifically for this topic. And and I think now, I also push the course, but I think one of my plans is to engage them more on issues, on linguistic issues, like almost like the bits, like the newsletter, but not quite a newsletter. I don't want to overwhelm them, but yeah, something like that.
So let's talk about the first course was a success, albeit we had a bit of technical challenges. So the second time we launched the course later on in this year, what was your sort of experience with that? Because we've been through the whole process once, how was your sort of experience going through it the second time?
We decided to time it with my presence at a very big journalism festival in Perugia, where I've also spoken about this issue. So I've done like the equivalent of a TED talk there. Because I thought, okay, I'll be there and I'll plug. But actually, even though the second launch went as well as the first, maybe a little bit better, I thought that me being present at this conference would have helped more. But actually, I think me being present at this conference made me work a little less on the supplementary emails or the social media engagement. So looking back, when I launch again, I'll probably not necessarily make it coincide with something that then is going to take my time away, So, but it still went really well. And obviously I was a lot more confident. I was engaging with people a lot more. I found my voice more, when you write those emails, 3 days to go, 2 days to go, it's today. So I was very, I wouldn't send one every day, but I think I was kind of finding my voice like I was speaking to an audience. And the great thing is that they could email me back. So it was nice to interact.
Yeah, I think the great bit of advice for anyone watching or listening to this is focus on that audience first. If you can engage with your audience as much as you have, you'll understand a little bit more or a lot more about what challenges they're having, what problems they're having, what questions they have, so you can then focus your program to address that. So no, I think that was really well done on your behalf. You did all the hard work driving people to the live training. So I guess, what would you say to people who are like looking at launching their own program? Any advice to give them if they haven't launched before, or they have and they didn't really sell any copies of the program? What sort of advice would you give, having launched a few times now?
Yeah, I have to say, I still think I'm finessing mine, right? So these are the questions that I ask myself. Just to boil down, what does someone get from this course? And the one thing that you kind of drilled into me, but now I really get, and I didn't get it before. It's not about how long it is, or, have I given people value for money? Yes, obviously you have to give people value for money, but you don't measure it in the length of the videos or how many videos or whatever. what is it that you are going to teach them? What do they learn from you? And also, what is it that they get from you and no one else? Because,
Yeah.
there's a lot of chancers out there that try to do the second language English thing. So I'm always there going, this is what you get from me. This is why what I tell you, and there's a balance between sounding arrogant, but also not selling yourself short. Why what I tell you is special because it's based on this experience.
Yeah.
And so I would say to really absolutely focus, because then you're going to need that laser focus for every email, for every social media post, for every engagement, for everything. And if it starts sounding a little bit vague, then take a step back and refocus if you can. That would be my advice, which I have to say I give to myself because I think I still have some work to do on that.
If anyone is second language English watching or listening to this, like, where can people find you? If anything you've said resonated, then where can people find you online?
Look, so barbaraserra.info is the platform that I'm dedicated to the course. So obviously there's the course, but there's a lot that I write there as well. And then if you go there, you'll see that there's a link to my newsletter as well. And if you just put Barbara Serra, I'm on all the usual platforms, although I'm not particularly engaged. I mean, I sort of do and I don't, but I don't obsess over social media. I focus more on these, newsletter and the course. So barbaraserra.info. And then from there, read what is on the website. There is a link to the course, but also there's a link to the newsletter, and you sort of can go down the rabbit hole of the second language English, culture, accents and everything, the impact that there is. But yeah, that's where I am. barbaraserra.com was taken.
Right. Okay. There's always ways around that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, yeah, thank you so much for your words of advice for anyone in your position or looking to launch their online program. But yeah, hopefully anyone watching this or listening to this will get some great nuggets of info. So thank you very much for your time on the call.
No, well, thank you also, for all the help that you gave me and all the stuff that you also put out for free, because I think it's overwhelming. I remember feeling so overwhelmed for such a long time. And now, sometimes even, this is really nerdy, but I will just go on the Kajabi platform. That's just the one that I'm using, just to kind of tinker around, and because it's all quite intuitive when you have time. But so now that I'm not launching, I do sometimes spend time on the website just getting my head around things, so that when I am in the middle of a launch and God forbid something happens or blah, 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 some issue with Stripe, then I kind of know my way around it.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. It just takes a little bit of time just to get to know everything on anything new. It just takes time and effort. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I'll let you get back to it. Thank you very much for your time on the call. And
thank you.
Yeah. Chat to you soon. Thanks, Barbara.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
So there we have it, the full interview with Barbara Serra. If any of that has resonated with you, feel free to reach out to her, reach out through her website or on socials. Now, if you want to zoom out a little bit more and understand how to put this whole bigger online business piece together, I do have some more free training for you. It's my online revenue workshop. Head to timpeakman.com/workshop to get instant access to this free training today. In this workshop, I talk about the 3 things every online business must have and some tactics to actually get you started earning online and well on your way to your first $1,000. So that link once more, timpeakman.com/workshop. And I look forward to seeing you again on another video soon.